Well, I don't know about any of you, but I really enjoyed watching the Paris Olympics this year. Maybe because so many people that I know, so many people that we know together went to be a part of the hundreds of thousands gathered to cheer on these amazing athletes. Maybe because of those 6 degrees of connections that make us feel like we know the competitors, how many from Nebraska were there. Maybe because the last time the world gathered to compete, it was under the stress and tension of the pandemic, and maybe it was because of all the goats. You know what a goat is, right? I'm not talking about the animal. I'm talking about the greatest of all time. It was after her amazing floor routine, which began with Taylor Swift's electrifying "Are You Ready for It?" and goes with nonstop with twists and tricks and turns and jumps and an equally electrifying smile, that gold medalist Simone Biles went and put on her bejeweled necklace of a goat. Greatest of all time. Did you watch that? How many of you watched that? Yeah. That in my head, I can do that. There are now other names that we know, like Noah Lyles, who competed with COVID and came in 3rd. Katie Ledecky, Sydney McLaughlin-Lavorne, Gabby Thomas, Cole Hawker, Jordan Larson. I almost know her. I see her on TV, so I'm pretty sure that I know her. I mean, like, she doesn't know me, but I'm pretty sure I know her. But there were really 2 stories that intrigued me about all these goats. One was the pole vaulting efforts of Armand Mondo Duplantis. Anybody watch that? Another raise of hands. How exciting was that? And how exciting was it to watch it live? It was on a Friday. So amazing, representing Sweden. Mondo won the gold and then kept going, kept vaulting. You know why? He already had the world record for the love of it. He kept going for the love of it. He didn't need to keep going. He not only bested his college competition, the USA's Sam Kendricks, but he decided to keep jumping for the love of the sport, for the 70,000 fans, for the thrill of being there. There was another story that was unfolding in the pool as the French phenom Leon Marchand, sorry, Thomas. There was a grimace over here. Not only did he continue to win golds and set new records, but he blew the previous GOAT, Michael Phelps, out of the water. See what I did there? The French fans went wild, of course, and Leon is a celebrity in his home country. But I'm an American. And every time they would show Michael Phelps' face, I would think, how does he feel about this? He's 39 years old, and as previously mentioned, none of us are getting younger. He's not likely to make a comeback. So what do 2 goats do when they get together? You ever wonder that, what it's like? I know these Olympians work incredibly hard through mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical challenges, through breakdowns, hardships, and injuries. So what's it like when all the goats are in the same place at the same time? And in the case of Leon Marchand and Michael Phelps, even share the same coach. What's it like? Do they have conversations like this one that comes from Mark's gospel today? It's while they're journeying through Galilee to Capernaum, and when they arrive, Jesus says, "What were you arguing about along the way?" That's when we know that the argument was loud enough to have drawn his attention, but maybe not so serious that he had to interject with a, "Don't you make me stop this car." Well, they respond that they were arguing about who was the greatest, which I've always interpreted to be about those who are having the argument. See, in Mark's gospel, these aren't brothers, this is all of the disciples. I wonder which one of us is the greatest. But as I was preparing and reading this text this morning, part of the glory of Mark's gospel is that in the context of the passage, it's Jesus is traveling, but he's not telling anyone because he's already started telling the disciples about how the human one will be handed over and killed, and after 3 days will rise up. It's in this context that the disciples argue about who is the goat. I wonder who they were arguing about. Maybe they weren't arguing about who was the greatest disciple. Maybe they were arguing about who was the greatest teacher, the greatest prophet. But I've always interpreted that it was about us. We're wading into some dangerous territory, and so I want to take just a moment here to talk about our sermon series for these last 2 weeks. The invitation that came from the session to me and Thomas this summer was to be vulnerable and open about what we believe, which is why we're not behind the pulpit. And it's dangerous here because we're talking about how our faith informs the way we live. So let's look at these words as our aspirations, because I know I don't always live this way. This is the part where you all get to scratch your head and say, I didn't always see her do these things. In fact, I've seen them do not these things. So please take these as words of the way we want to live. And as I think about these two things this morning that are our subjects, being humble and being just, I want to share a few stories from my life of way back when. So I'm not behind the pulpit. I'm sitting here in a chair. The first has to do with winning. During my teenage years, I began competitive dancing on a team. I was first on a team of around 90 girls, ages 3 to 16. Now, I don't know if any of you have ever seen the TV show Dance Moms. It was like that, on steroids. 90 girls. Then I tried out for and made my high school competitive dance and drill team. My sister had been on the team all 3 of her high school years, and the team had always come up just short of winning. My first year on the team was no different. So we resolved to be different. We put in the work. We practiced twice a day for much of the year round. We adjusted our food and calorie intake to maximize. We performed whenever we got a chance. By the time of my senior year of high school rolled around, we were ready for that competition. It was the early 90s, and we adopted the 1992 Nike ad campaign slogan, "If winning isn't everything, how come nobody goes for the bronze?" We set our sights, we worked hard, we made sacrifices, and we won. Number 1 in the state of Idaho, first place. We got the gold. I was pretty pumped up when I went to college. I was still riding that feeling of greatness. And it was during the first days of college when we were taking part in some get-to-know-you, friendly, competitive initiation traditions, and one of them had to do with singing and dancing. Now, don't ask me to sing, but I do know how to dance. So I was very frustrated when the group that I was taking part in wasn't listening to my suggestions. And finally, I shared with them just who I was, so that they would know I was part of the gold first place winning competitive dance team in the state of Idaho. And you know what happened? Somebody turned to me and said, "Yeah, we're all winners here." Then I went to the dance class that I signed up for. I didn't like it. Now, at the time, I made excuses. It was the time of day, it was the style of ballet, it was the teacher. But reflecting on it, I really think it was something else. I'm not a dancer who loved dancing. I'm a dancer who loved the team. I missed my team. I missed all of it. I missed the camaraderie. I think I'd reached my highest aspirations and nothing would ever feel like that again. The teammates all working hard and dedicating our lives to winning, the feel of the award-winning performances. I realized I didn't actually love dancing. And so I started to find more joy in running, which had always been part of our training, but never an end in itself. And certainly I am not a competitive runner. So here's my confession to you this morning. I wanted to be the greatest. I wanted to be the greatest student, dancer, pastor, preacher, writer. I wanted to be the first female pastor of the largest Presbyterian church in the country. I had visions of being asked to go on the preaching circuit to sell out crowds. I wanted to be asked to write a book knowing that it would sell out immediately. I didn't even care if that was only amongst the Presbyterians. I would be very content to be like Bruce Reyes-Chow, very well known to a small group of people. I envisioned all of that because I wanted really to be the greatest Christian of all, whatever that means. Now, as I've aged, I've taken up other hobbies and disciplines that have changed me. My goal now is to be the greatest friend, daughter, sister, wife, mom, daughter-in-law. But we all know there's no gold medal for those things. And there is no such thing as the greatest any of those things. Those are the places where I continue to find love and acceptance. Those are the places where I'm often not the greatest, where I am the most broken and open, where I am the most vulnerable and the most intimately known. Those are the places where I have to have hard conversations the most often and sit with people that I love and say, I'm sorry, and offer no excuses. These are the places where relationships, where caring for and loving others, loving God, is more precious than gold or silver. Where serving others comes out of a place of love. As I read this passage from Mark today, I think about what it means to be part of a community of faith, to be Christian together. And I wonder if this is what Jesus is doing here, transforming this group of disciples from followers who are figuring out how to get their prophet recognized as the goat, or lobbying for position as the goat amongst the disciples, into a community who puts loving God, themselves, and others as the highest achievement. There's a pastor who has achieved the amount of fame that I have not. His name is Cornel West, and he said, justice is what love looks like in public. And I think that's how these two things come together, humble and just. Another confession this morning. Justice is where living my faith has often fallen short. Please continue to listen, because I'm going to use some words that might cause you to want to turn away or to stop listening online. I have a number of excuses why I haven't been more of an advocate, and I'm not going to bore you with them. The bottom line, and the real reason, is that, believe it or not, I don't want to be political in the pulpit. If you ever think I'm being political in the pulpit, it's unintentional and might be more about you, still listen, please, than me. It's important for you to know this as we enter an election cycle. God, Jesus Christ, our holy book of scriptures are all much older than this country. In fact, as a student of history, I will tell you that every time religion has become part of the identity of the state, both religion and the state have suffered. Horrible wrongs have been perpetrated in the name of God. Both the nation and the church have suffered. And so I do believe strongly in the separation of church and state. But I also believe that there's a necessary relationship between the two. Because try as I might, I can't get around some of the things Jesus says and how that affects the way I'm supposed to live, the way that we're supposed to live. And politics is just the way we think about living together. It's the most visible way, the way that is most often in the news, especially right now. Participating in politics is how we get to policies, and policies are how we live together in community. And those policies are not always just, even at times when they might be fair. Justice is how we love one another in public. This has never been done perfectly, not anywhere in history, and not now in any place around the world. I've never participated in a protest, not intentionally. I've never willingly and excitedly signed a petition, although I did sign one recently under much duress from my family looking on and saying, "Why are you not signing that?" And so I have struggled in this area. Because I do think it's important for my faith to participate in what's happening around my community, around my country, and around my world. And so I've struggled for 46, 47 years to find my voice in the public sphere. Which is why I have been so encouraged by the work that we are doing as a community, the work of Justice in Action, which you'll be hearing more about in the upcoming months. For me, working together with other people of faith in our community, the work of Justice in Action has allowed me to enter the dialogue with policymakers in our community and to offer more than just a protest, but to say we want to work together. Tell us what's happening. We want to know what's happening behind the scenes, and we want to share with you what we have learned about what may be a better way. We work so that we can find solutions for those things that keep us up at night, like mental health and diversion programs and housing. For me, it's a way for my faith to join with a community of faith that is much larger than me and much larger than us, and that envelops our whole city and county in an effort to do justice in our community. For me, it's very vital and so important that this comes from a place of knowing the greatest love of all is that God loves you, that God loves me, that God loves each and every one of us. How do we do that? Well, we've all heard these words before from the prophet Micah. What does the Lord require of us? We know the answer is justice, mercy, humbleness. Those are spiritual fruits, if you will. But these things don't just happen. They're accompanied in this verse by verbs. You love mercy. You walk humbly. You do justice. And I think this is a team sport. I think this is something that we're all called to do together. I think that these are the disciplines that will lead us to the GOAT. The greatest of all time, greatest of all time. And I think that's the love of God, the love of others and the love of ourselves. And there's no winning. There's no gold medal for this goat. But there is this vision of peace.